Going to be exploring the ready states, and it goes through 4 different ready states. So it starts at ready state 0 whenever the item is unsent. So whenever you've created the XHR object, but it's unsent, it's going to be sitting at 0. When we add in the open statement, that means that it's at ready state 1 and it's been called. When we have send, that allows us to move on to ready state 2, 3, and 4. So the next step is going to be the progress, where the headers are received from the endpoint. We're going to have a status code of 200. Ready state 3 is where we're loading and we're retrieving back the response text. So we do have response text at that stage, but we want to listen for the final ready state, which is ready state 4. And we can also retrieve that using the onLoad event, making a request to the data text. And this is an AJAX request, and then updating the main inner HTML with the XHR response text from the endpoint. This lesson, we're going to be tracking the different ready states. So go ahead and set up the button, the main for the container output, and then this is the URL where we're requesting the data from, and this is going to be just a regular text file. So we've got our HTML file set up. Let's add the event listener to the button. So for the button, using the onClick method, and we'll run a function called request data, req data. So when this gets invoked, this is going to be whenever the button is clicked. Make sure that it is working. We'll output into the console just the word click whenever the button is clicked. So we're ready to make our request to the endpoint. So we want to track the various ready states. So once we set up the request object, that's going to be the first ready state, and that's going to be a value of 0. So let's output that and track that information with the various ready states, and we'll output them into the console. So first we need to create our object. So it's going to be the XHR object, and using the new XMLHttpRequest function, that will create a new request object. And within the console log, we'll track the ready state. So within the XHR, and then you can just output the ready state property value for the XHR object. So when we click it, we're currently at the ready state of unsent, and that's going to have the value of 0. We can track the changes on the ready state using a function that's called onReadyStateChange. So that's an event that occurs on the XHR object. So onReadyStateChange is going to run every time the ready state changes. And we can track out whatever the ready state is of the current value as it changes. So we'll console log and output whatever the ready state is of this. So right now we shouldn't have anything, we just have 0 because we haven't actually changed the ready state. So in order to change the ready state, the next statement for changing the ready state is going to be open. So let's create that, where we've got the XHR object and then open the method that we want to use, and that's going to be the get request, and that's going to be going to the URL. And the console log within here, we need to be tracking it as capitalized, so camel case with ready state. And when we're referencing, if we're using the arrow format, we're not going to be able to pick up this. So if we use the arrow format, we'd have to use the XHR. We click it, we see that now the ready state has changed to 1, and that's being tracked out into the console. So we're outputting the current ready state. You can also update this. I'm using the backticks and just adding in a string value for, I'll call it RS for the ready state, and then whatever the value is that we have for the ready state, and then close off the template literals using the closing backtick. So that will output the ready state of 1 into the console. And if we were to use the keyword this, the keyword this is going to be referencing the main window object. So that's where we're going to get the undefined. So we have an option here where we can do the name function, instead of the arrow function for anonymous function, and that will also return back the ready state. So it's optional what format you're using, but if you are using this, then you do need to use the keyword, the function keyword format. So next we want to open up and get the progress. So once we're loading it, we can also track the xHR on progress. And this is another event that can track the progress of the xHR object. Here we'll track in and we'll log out the RS, or we'll just log out the progress. So this is one of the states that it's going in. We're still on ready state number 1, so that's why we don't see anything happening. If we output and if we actually send it, and we're just going to send null, so we're not going to send any values in it, that gives us all of the ready states. And progress is going to be ready state number 3. So as we're progress on 0, it's unsent. On 1, it's opened, so it's the ready state 1. On 2, that means that the headers have been received, so the send has been called. And then the next stage is going to be the loading. So this is going to be where the response body is received. The fourth and final one is going to be when the data has loaded. So we can add in an onload event and then listen for the onload event and output that once it's been completed. And this is also going to be the fourth ready state. So once we output that, we've got the done. So this is when it's complete and it's loaded. So we can just output the word done, and we'll see that this is going to be the last ready state. So this is where we've got content and we're ready to make use of that content. So within the current object at this point, we should also have the text. So the whatever we've got for the response text, and we should be able to see that value at that point. If we try to get the response text before that, so if we get it within the progress stage of the ready states, we still see the output there because we've sent the response headers, but we won't see them within the earlier stages. So we're not going to see it within 1, we're not going to see it within 2, but within 3, we've already got the response text, and that's because we've got the progress of the data coming back. And until we've reached ready state number 4, that's when it's been completed, and that we can then at that point make use of the data that's been loaded. We can also have a function that we can check the different ready states. So once the ready state is changing, so there's a number of ways that you can add and determine whenever we've completed all of the ready states. So we can also have a condition, so sometimes you'll see it being written that if this ready state is equal to 4, that means that it's complete and that the response text is ready to go. So at that point as well, we've got this is also done, and we do have response text. So just update these to the backticks, and I'll add in the response text. And we can see that from our example here, that once we hit 3, we do have a response text. And then we can use it, we can output it to the page. So there's our done, which is number 4, and that's the output from line 14 there. So that means that ready state is 4. We can also track the status. So as we're going through, we can track whatever the current this status is. And this is going to give you a status code. And on complete, it's going to be a status code of 200. So we don't have a status code. We have it 0 until we hit the ready state. And then at this point, we've made the connection to the server. So that means that the headers have been sent and the statuses are available. So we're able to get a 200 because we've successfully connected to the server. And then 3 and 4 also are going to have 200 because they're completed on those ready states. So let's make an update to this. And this is going to be on the on-click. I'll just update the function. So whenever it gets clicked, then we're going to make a request to the endpoint for the data and then retrieve back the content. So the objects that we need is we need to create the xHR object, and then we also need to send and open. And these are the different statements that we need in order to make the full connection. And if we want to track, we can do it on the onload function, where whenever it's loaded, then we run this function and we can retrieve back the data. And you can use the arrow formats and use the full XHR object. So it's still going to be referencing that same object. And as long as it's within the same scope, we're able to reference XHR as whatever the current object is. So the XHR will return back the response text. So that just shortens, and you don't need to track all of these unless you're looking to do certain actions during the different stages of the connection. And here we can even shorten it even more if we're updating the current main text. So whenever the onload is ready, we get the text content, and in this case it's HTML code, so we'll set the inner HTML to whatever we've got here for the text content, and this can also shorten it a little bit more. So now whenever we click the button, we're going to retrieve back onload for the ready state, so ready state 4. Then we can take the content from the XHR response text and output it within the main HTML. So this is another way that you can make your AJAX request, providing you an example of all the different ready states that it goes through in order to complete the request.